Today we are in the British Museum to meet with our colleague Naomi, who's the curator of the medieval collections here, to look at some of the objects that we are borrowing for the new medieval partnership gallery that is part of the Norwich Castle Royal Palace Reborn Project, which has been wonderfully funded by the Heritage Fund.
Norwich Castle Keep was, and indeed is, one of the most important Norman buildings in the country. And that's hugely exciting for me and for everyone at the British Museum, because in the heart of Bloomsbury here in London, we have this beautiful museum, but of course it's not a medieval building. So that opportunity to show medieval objects in a medieval setting is wonderful. And really, I think that the star object, if you like, in the whole gallery is the castle itself.
The partnership gallery is within Norwich Castle Keep itself. We've actually developed a special level for it that wasn't part of the historical layout. So this is devoted specifically to this museum gallery space, whereas other spaces are the recreated spaces. So you have a chance to walk into the rooms as they would have been 900 years ago.
It will be the largest display of the British Museum's medieval collection outside of London. They've been studied, researched, conserved, but this will be the first time they've been displayed to the public.
So over a number of years we've been exploring potential objects to borrow, and all the ones that have been chosen link in with the different themes as well as complementing the objects that we have at the castle itself. These include pieces of armour, wonderful high status ivory mirror cases and boxes, scientific instruments like an astrolabe. So they really allow us to tell the whole breadth of the medieval world, but also that high status material which we don't have in the collection. The gallery is divided into three themes based on how the medieval world viewed their own social order: those who work, those who fight, and those who pray. And all of the objects that we are borrowing fit into one of those themes.
The objects that we've selected speak to each of those, and some, I think, do that really evocatively. So, for example, those who fight. Now that doesn't just relate to knights, but here we're thinking about the social elite of the medieval world. And an object that does that in a really entertaining way is an early 14th century elephant ivory casket. But what's interesting about it is that it shows a popular courtly poem, a 13th century poem, a tragic love story of a woman called the Châtelaine de Vergy, who was a noblewoman at the Burgundian court. And across the lid and around the sides, you see this story of tragic love brought to life in beautiful detail. Some of the most overlooked objects in medieval collections can be seal matrices. Seal matrices are objects which are used to create an impression in wax, a wax seal. They were very important in the Middle Ages because that is your ID, basically. By sealing a document, it's your mark of authority and authenticity on it. Norwich's collection contains a whole host of fascinating seal matrices that have the names of the original owners around them. So we know some of these important local people. But through the loans from the British Museum, we can also show some of these marks of authority and identity for English kings in the waiting.
So I have lots of different favourite objects, but I think one of them has to be this wonderful sallet helmet. It's a piece of armour from the 15th century, and you can see it has the maker's marks on it. But when you see it, you get this chance to understand really just how it would have worked and how little you would have been able to see out of it when wearing it. And that gives you a fantastic perspective on the medieval knight and combat, as well as its wider role in the medieval world.
Exhibiting these objects in Norwich Castle will bring a real richness to the stories that those objects can tell, but also just that social and historical context, because they will be in a setting where objects like this would have been used.
Some of the most important people of medieval times came together and celebrated. And as the second city of medieval England and one of the most spectacular Norman keeps, it is the perfect place. We couldn't think of anywhere better to be profiling our medieval collection and working together with Norwich colleagues to be able to bring those objects back to that place, connecting with those people who would have occupied that building is just such a spectacular opportunity for us.
One of the great privileges of being a curator and working in museums is that chance to see objects up close and to handle them. And once you get a sense of what they feel like and what they look like up close, your whole view changes. You begin to notice little details, you begin to think about all the different stories that they are contained. There's so much life of being able to see an object in person.
The British Museum is a national institution and it has a national role to share the collection as widely as possible, but it also has a role in partnership working with museums. It's an absolute privilege for us at the British Museum to be working in partnership. We learn so much about our collection. We get the enjoyment of learning about partner museum collections also, and together we can, I think, achieve greater outcomes as a result.
It's a real privilege to be able to work with the medieval collection in Norwich because it's one of the best in the country. Norwich as a city was one of the most important cities in medieval England. So that medieval history is so valuable, not just to Norwich, not just to Norfolk, not just to East Anglia, but the whole country and really to the story of medieval Europe.